this mumbo jumbo from the ceiling to the floor. I can never stop myself, always wanting more. Too much information, check every day, but the kind that makes the question is the kind they take away. And then somewhere that's a final state of mind. I can live without only there. That's a final state of mind. No doubt about it.
Right. That was a song called Too Much Information, which sounds like it was composed for this day and age. I actually wrote it about 30 years ago, which I guess goes to show that there's certain things which continue to bother us.
So
Richard Niles.
I'm going to guess. I am Richard Niles, and you are Matt Backer. It's been a long time since we've seen each other, especially naked.
Yeah.
That was on stage with Michael Ball, but that's
That's right, yes.
Yes. But anyway, wow, how great to see you. Now, of course, welcome to Musicians Funnies.
Yeah.
The logo is going to be flopping on the screen now.
Yeah.
What I really want to know is you've worked with just about every major artist in the history of mankind, and some from the Neanderthal period, I'm sure. Sometimes things happen while we're trying to make a living.
I was thinking about this, and it occurred to me that a couple of instances of funny stuff which happened, which involved you, and you might not remember this.
No, I'd love to hear these.
First of all, I have to thank you so much for the opportunity that you gave me for playing with Michael Ball, because aside from the fact that I was well out of my league, and you forced me to up my game and play with some great musicians, but it was also, instant CV. It was like, just add Richard and your CV will suddenly multiply enormously.
That's very sweet of you to say so.
Well, it was a great opportunity. And I don't know if you remember, I realize now that you had rather a lot going on. And I don't think I really appreciated how much UMDs have going on until a TV show that I was doing some years later, which Steve Brown was MDing. And he had to go off and do a sketch. And he passed me his headphones and said, okay, just count the band in. And the absolute cacophony. During lockdown, I've been a complete space nerd. I've been listening to documentaries about Apollo 11 and Apollo 13, and I've become familiar with the whole concept of the communications loop.
Nice.
And it's like that on crack. So you've got the gallery, you've got the floor, you've got the stage manager, all this noise happening simultaneously.
Yes.
And somehow you've got to get your cue out of all that.
That's right.
And I don't know if you remember, but when Cher played, and again, we were extremely fortunate because we had a live band. We had these artists coming on.
Fantastic
and
live band.
And Cher came on a motorcycle, and Michael went over to lift her off the motorcycle, oblivious to the fact that she wasn't wearing any knickers. So they had to take that all over again because she gave the audience quite a flash.
Well.
And again, something I've subsequently learned about you string people, and I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of orchestral work. And whenever things go wrong, invariably, the singer is always right.
Yes.
And I still marvel at how you're able to turn the oil tanker around. I still don't know how you do that.
Well,
and I've seen you do it.
Yeah, the singer is always right, and especially when they're wrong.
James Brown, bless his heart, you did this beautiful arrangement of It's a Man's World.
Yes, I love that.
And his MD was conducting it. And, he thought, oh, great, I got a string orchestra. And of course, James was doing what James does, which is his thing. And if you've got a small band, even a sort of largish small band like his, they're all used to following his cues.
Right.
And I remember listening to, there's a great version of This Is Hip on, I think it's The Healer, the Grammy-winning John Lee Hooker thing, and Little Village, as was Ry Cooder, Jim Keltner, John Hyatt, and Nick Lowe. They're the band. They do this great version of This Is Hip, and they're all totally in tune with him.
Yeah.
And they change whenever he decides to change. And it's, just that momentary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to do when you got an orchestra. So congratulations, heartfelt thanks, and I still don't know how you do it.
Well, let me give you a little hint on how I did that. Knowing what James Brown was like, I went over to the string section guys, and of course Gavin Wright was leading, and that made everything easy because he was a genius. It probably still is. And I said to them, look, I'm not conducting this because politically I wasn't allowed to. We had to use James Brown's MD, whose name was Sweets. So and he was a lovely guy, but conducted as if he was dancing the boogaloo. So there was no actual sensible kind of cueing of the. So I said, look, man, you guys have got to understand that James Brown could change anything at any time. So when you see letter B could go on for the written number of bars, but it could also go on twice as long or 3 times as long. It depends on James Brown. So if you've got to ignore the guy who's dancing over here, because really he's not going to tell you anything. Look at James Brown all the time. I said he's the conductor. And so be prepared to change when he wants things to go on, or he wants sections to, rock out or something. Just keep going around that section. And I told them beforehand, and which is why they did that. And when it got to, what did we do? The other song we did was I Got You, right?
I got,
yeah. And that one went on and on, for ages. And so everybody was hip to the fact that, and unfortunately I wasn't allowed to be on stage, which is a great sorrow to me because it was James Brown. But still, it was great to do the charts and also to talk to James Brown, which I found tremendously fun.
Yeah, I thought he was a sweetheart, and we saw him in his curlers.
Yes.
And I subsequently learned that my cousin lives in Augusta, and I think prior to the time that we did the show, he'd had the famous police chase.
Right.
According to my cousin, he's a local treasure, and the local police force always looked out for him. And on this occasion, the story was he'd been to the dentist and he'd necked a whole bunch of painkillers and sort of sent him to Lally. But, maybe he went off on one. In any case, the police were used to dealing with this, but he suddenly got extremely paranoid and hit the accelerator and started heading towards the county line. And so it was the Augusta police who were trying to shoot out his tires, trying to prevent him from crossing the county line, because they knew that once he crossed the county line, he was going to get arrested. That whole thing of being prepared for the unexpected.
Indeed.
25 years ago. And you can still see footage of my younger self at the BBC doing later with Steve Earle and Emmylou Harris. And originally, I'd been hired along with Marcus Cliff. I don't know if you know Marcus, great bass player.
Yeah.
And he played with Mark Knopfler and loads of people. We did lots of television together as well. And we were doing this thing, and it was your proper unplugged, nothing plugged in at all. He had his upright bass, I had my dobro, we had mics in front of him, Steve had his old Gibson, and that was it. So we did one of the tracks that we'd rehearsed, although the rehearsal consisted of Steve mainly saying, I hate rehearsing, and telling stories about how he used to score drugs in the old White City estate.
Yeah.
And then Mark Cooper, who's only recently stepped down as gatekeeper at the BBC, had the bright idea of not doing the second song that we'd rehearsed, but Emmylou Harris was on, and she was promoting her Wrecking Ball album, which Daniel Lanois produced. It's a great album. And she was doing it with his trio. So it was Brian and Brady Blade and Daniel on guitar and Emmylou. And it was really, it was really raw and funky and cool.
Nice.
But she had a song on her album called Goodbye, which was a Steve song. And Steve also had the same song on the album that he was promoting. So Mark Cooper says, hey, why don't you guys do that song? Okay, says Steve. Great. Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. So they start counting down. So it was Marcus, myself, Steve, Emmylou, and Daniel. So Daniel's got this really cool Firebird 7, and he's going through a little early 50s Fender Deluxe, and it's turned down to like about 1, but it still sounds cool, and he's doing his wibbly thing, and he's got his duster coat, and he's got his big hat. And I thought, well, I don't know what's going on, but hey, I just have to play dobro licks. So I just listen to the one, and then I follow that. So that's okay. And I still, to this day, don't know how Marcus did it. But, it's okay if you're playing guitar licks, but during lockdown, I've had to do a lot of sessions on bass because I'm the best bass player in my price range.
Oh, yeah.
And you got to be on the one,
Oh, yeah.
You got to hit the right chord on the one. And to this day, I still don't know how he did it because he was set behind Steve and he couldn't even see his hands.
Right.
But he got it. So I'm still thinking, well, this is sounding great. And here I am with legendary Grammy and Oscar-winning producer Daniel Lanois. So I'm feeling happy and comfortable. And Daniel's looking really cool. And suddenly he turns around with his back to the camera and he looks at me and he says, what's the next chord?
Wow.
Aimee and Steve looked really intense, and it still gets shown. I still get paid for it. And I'm actually very proud of it because it's one of those wonderful musical moments which just happened. And they both look very intense. And people have said to me, oh, that must have been a song about an affair that they had because they look so absolutely, so intense.
Yeah.
And I suppose I can say this now. You don't want to disillusion your audience. And it's kind of like that thing of the reader and the author come up with this relationship, which might not necessarily be what the author intended when he wrote the book, but something happens. And so the listener and the singer.
Was her version of it in the same key as his version?
No. But, she was able to do it.
Yeah.
And, but the thing was, they both knew the song, but they never actually sung it together. Yeah. So the reason for the intensity is they didn't know who was going to sing which line.
Right.
But they nailed it.
Yeah, well, good.
One take.
Marvelous.
That was the first take, the one that went out.
Yeah, nice.
And I suppose the lesson from that is expect the unexpected. That doesn't mean don't rehearse and don't prepare. It just means do all of those things, but something might come out of left field, which you're not expecting.
Yes, well, the rehearsal and the preparing prepares you to have the unexpected, so to react to it, because you wouldn't be able to react fast enough. What people don't realize about studio musicians, you have to make really very, very fast decisions within a second of what to do. And you have to base that on the environment around you. So, I mean, look, you made a comment about how great it was that I hired you for that thing. But the times that I did hire you, which wasn't enough, but when I did, it was because I wanted somebody who could turn on hot rock bitch in a second. And that's what you could always do. Now, I've never been a rock guy. I've never been that person. I'm a jazz bow, and I can play some kind of groovy, bluesy stuff. But in terms of especially the real serious rock stuff, you are a fairly masterful chap. And not only that, but you have the greatest guitar collection in the history of mankind. And I was hoping you might have a couple of your choice guitars lying around that you could show us. But
well, yeah, well, there's well, if you give me a moment, I can go out and get what I've got. Now,
you can.
unfortunately, I have.
I mainly want you to get
I'm-
out the Supro, man, because that's a beautiful looking guitar.
Yeah, I haven't got that here, but I mean, this is a 1946 Gibson LG1,
Nice.
which sounds great.
Yeah.
You know, this is a Taylor. It's a great job's worth guitar. We've been around the world together.
Yeah.
What you were mentioning earlier, that ability of people being able to go with the moment and make the music happening. And again, going back to Michael Ball, and you know, again, I'm grateful for the opportunity you gave me because it was a chance to actually play with people. And it might be, I don't know if it's the last, but one of the last shows in which, okay, here we've got Later, and I guess you've got Austin City Limits in the States, and various shows like that. You've got Ta 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 in France, and a few other ones scattered around Europe. But a show in which the music is the star. And, you know, the argument is that the music is the star in The Voice or The X Factor, and I have a lot of friends who work on those shows here and in the States. So I don't in any way want to denigrate that,
No.
because they work really hard and they do an exceptionally good job.
Oh, yes.
However, the music isn't the star. The music is accompanying the competition, which is fine. You know, I have no problem with that. Like I say, it keeps a lot of my friends gainfully employed.
Yes.
But shows in which the music and the performer are the focal point, and it's nothing else other than, right, this week we got Montserrat Caballé, and next week we're going to have Joe Cocker.
Exactly. Which is what we did.
Where does that happen anymore?
Right.
Uh,
And, you know, since you brought up this point, here's my problem with those shows. I was at a session for Boyzone.
Oh, yeah.
And the executive producer, a man named Cowell, said to me, you know, Rich, I've got this fantastic idea. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, I figured out a way, because he said the music business sales are going down. We're really worried about this, but I've got an idea that's going to save the music business. I said, oh, really? What's that? And he said, well, I've got a way to make money without selling one record. I said, really? That's interesting. He says, yeah. He said, do you know what premium phone lines are? And I said, no, I have no idea what they are. He said, well, I'm going to have a competition show where you get all these dramatic stories about these struggling people trying to, you know, become pop stars. And he said, and the public will call in, and we're going to make millions. And it doesn't matter if the person who wins the show is successful or not, because we've already made the millions. And so it's completely great. And not only that, the record companies who support it will give us the money to make it, and it's all taken care of, because they will get to release the records of the artists who win the competition, whether they sell a record or not. And he said, it's genius. It's going to save the music business. And okay, well, from a financial and business point of view, he was right. But I totally get your concept about, you know, it's putting a lot of musicians to work. Well, it actually, let's edit that. It's putting some musicians to work. It's putting whatever band they hire, 10 musicians to work. But
or the production team, because
and the production team, and all those people. Yeah, and that's great. That's fantastic that those people are working, and they do a superb job, no question of that. But the problem is that for me, and I know this isn't exactly musicians funny kind of comment, but I feel the need to become slightly serious about it in saying, I think what it has done to the public is it gives the impression that musicians are meant to be judged on a scale of 1 to 10 and votes, and it's some kind of competition, whereas you and I know that music is only a competition in terms of, yes, you want to be as good as you can be, and you're really only competing with yourself, because it's you who feels like crap if you play badly, not anybody else. But I think that it creates the impression in the eyes of the public that music is not of value because it's something that you can sit in judgment of as if you know everything. And as we all know, opinions are like, as we all know,
Yes.
thing which I'm not going to say on Radio Richard, everyone's
Yeah.
got one. And
Yeah.
opinions, actually, the only opinion that matters is your own artistic opinion. And if you're constantly, the approval that you should be seeking is yourself, and I know how hard you work at the thing that you do, because you are the guy who can recreate any of those blues, rock, country sounds instantly. And you know just how to do it, and you have just the instrument to do it with. And that's a lot of work. And I don't think it helps, these shows help people appreciate how much work goes into this, and that artists should be respected, not judged. So that's me. That's my rant over with now.
Yeah, but I think that's accurate, and it's also that thing of the American X Factor has a band, hasn't it? Or at least it used to.
I guess so.
All of the shows here, everything is pre-recorded. Everybody does it in a studio, and then the artist comes out and they do their thing, and they're singing to track.
Yeah.
And that the kind of interaction on one of the rare occasions when there was a bit of freedom, and I went out with a few of my colleagues, and we got together and we were just sitting around, just catching up with each other. What everybody was saying was, well, first of all, when they finally got a chance to actually play with other people for the first time in ages, they played a song with other people and then said, oh my God, that was exhausting. Do I have to do another one? So a lot of what we used to do and just take for granted, we're going to have to build up, and actually physically.
Yeah.
Last week, I did a set of ABC songs that I played guitar and I sang backing vocals, and boy, was I winded afterwards. I've been lucky. I've been working. I've been doing sessions at home. I've been writing, but doing a session from home means, great, I'm going to do a guitar pass and I'll go make a cup of tea, and I'll come back and I'll do a bass pass, and then I'll go make another cup of tea, as opposed to actually, doing the whole thing.
Sure.
But a lot of people were saying, wow, it's just great being in a room with people again. And I hope that people will remember what that's like, and maybe that will arrest the decline of studios. And that thing that you were talking about, which was starting to be lost, where you said you have to make decisions in an instant because you're in a room with other people and an artist, and the decision that you make then decides how it's going to go.
Sure.
I'm lucky. I know a lot of named producers, and there's one well-known rock producer. I won't mention his name, but he's mixed the Foo Fighters, and so he gets a lot of work mixing rock bands. And I popped into his studio to say hi one day, and he said, look at this. I've managed to take this track, and I've reduced it to 120 tracks. Now this is a rock band, so the label sent him a rock band, and it's supposed to sound like 2 guitars, bass, drums. Yeah, simple rock. Yeah, great, raw, straightforward. And he said, okay, here we have overhead left, overhead right, mics on all of the cymbals.
Yeah.
Snare mic beneath the snare.
Yes.
Amp, guitar amp 1, guitar amp 2, close mic, distant mic,
Yes.
And and what it boils down to is exactly what George Martin used to say. He said, if you bring up the backing tracks of Sergeant Pepper individually, and you don't mix them, it sounds pretty much like Sergeant Pepper, because they had to make decisions at the time.
Correct.
And I'm lucky enough to know Giles. He's played me some stuff. He sent me stuff, when he was making Love. So the things that he was just sort of mangling and
Right.
convoluting.
Right.
And he actually had to work really hard, because a lot of the stems, they were an entire rhythm section and piano and vocals. There wasn't an awful lot that was isolated.
Absolutely. I talk about this a lot with various people, and I was doing an interview about engineers and how important they are. And I'm very excited that I'm going to be very soon doing an interview with Shel Talmy, who,
Oh, cool.
Who of course
Yeah.
revolutionized, I think, rock production single-handedly with The Who and the Kinks.
Yeah.
But we are in a world where people don't understand how great it is to have an ensemble playing and performing together. Now, that would go for, I mean, the Who records and the Kinks records had a couple of overdubs here and there, but they were done live. And the Rolling Stones records and all those great records that we all love. And the rhythm sections of the Beatles were done pretty much live. And not only that, this then moves into all my orchestral work, where for years and years, I have always said, if there's a singer involved and they want an orchestral arrangement, let's do it live. Let's do it live.
Yeah.
Now, when you're working with somebody like Denise Williams, there is no problem doing that. But most singers are scared to death to do it.
Yeah.
And so there's a certain excitement that happens in the room when you are in a room with either, let's say, 6 people playing together beautifully and having fun, or 60 people. Not very long ago, well, just before the pandemic struck, I did this record here, which is music for Tomb Raider. And a friend of mine, Peter Connolly, wrote all this music, and he came to me and said, I've loved all the stuff that you've done for the Pet Shop Boys, and I loved all the stuff you did for so-and-so, and I'd really like you to arrange all of these orchestral pieces for me, but I want you to not just orchestrate them, but I want to see some of that Richard Niles stuff in there, and I want you to do whatever you think, you have complete carte blanche to do whatever you want. And I got to go into a studio with the finest studio band I think I've ever used in my entire life, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
To record this stuff. And it was amazing the way that, and I recorded it live, that was it. Strings, I was in Angel. It was one of the last sessions they did before they closed down.
Yeah.
And I was in there, I had the strings in the middle. I had percussion in one room. I had piano going. Clive Dunstall played piano. I had a beautiful brass section with John Thirkell and Mark Nightingale. I had a fantastic woodwind section. It was just mind-blowingly good to be in that room with those people and to have what I had written performed with such love and expertise. It was just mind-blowing, and it would not have sounded as good if it were overdubbed.
I remember the last time I was at Angel was after they'd announced that they were closing, and I just thought, what a sad, stupid waste. And I looked at the floor, and the floor, this beautiful wooden floor, which is a complete mess because of all the instruments that had been dragged over there, and the vibes and the percussion and the pianos, and it was beat up, but it was beat up with love. And Dudley always used to insist on using that, because
I'll tell you why she did and why I did is because the booths. You were able to have things separated, but still record together as a group. And that's why I know that's why I recorded there so often.
Part of the reason that Abbey Road, and if it weren't for Paul McCartney, it'd be closed now. You know, EMI would have sold it and turned it into flats.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds good because Elgar designed the room. He designed one. Everything was designed to sound good with orchestras playing and instruments playing. So all of the rooms complement the instruments. And a little funny story, when I was working with Rumer, we did a show which was, you know, live from Studio 2. And so we went in there and we were just sort of messing around, and Rumer said, so tell me, what happened in here then?
I see. Yes. Well,
again, the great thing about two, and Mickey DeLenz always tells the story about going in to see the Beatles, and when the Monkees were over in Britain, the first thing they did was race down to Abbey Road and, you know, go and try to get some inspiration. And he said, we walked into this room, which looked like a school gymnasium.
right.
And there are these four guys on the floor just working really hard, and 2 or 3 guys up in the control room, which was up a really steep staircase.
Right.
You know, there's nothing glamorous about it.
No.
But the room sounds great.
That's right.
And
no,
every time you close down a space, you lose that.
And the other thing is engineers. I mean, engineers used to learn their trade by being tape ops and apprenticing themselves to an experienced engineer. And I know this sounds like old fart stuff, and I've said it before in my Radio Richard interviews, but I really feel that the apprenticeship thing is very, very important. I mean, in a way, it's just exactly the same as a musician learning from a great musician.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm going to do another small rant. Everybody is in their rooms working on their own, and you know, they're not even playing the guitar and the bass and the instruments themselves. They're using existing loops, not just loops of rhythm patterns, but actual musical loops that you can buy now, where you can put a whole song together using somebody else's chord progression, somebody else's drum beat, somebody else's song form, you know, and you don't have to know anything about music. And I did an interview with Lyle Mays where he said it's the triumph of modern technology to have this, but of course it makes creativity a joke. I mean, people say, I wrote this song. No, you didn't. What you did was you took some studio musicians' recordings that they've already recorded of a 1-4-5 progression, and you've used that, or a 1-6-2-5, whatever it is. And you've just stolen that, and you've stolen that, and you put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. But a jigsaw puzzle of a Rembrandt is not the Rembrandt. And so, okay, I've had my little rant. I'm stopping now.
Yeah, but sometimes you can find sensitivity and creativity where you least expect it. I've worked a lot over the years with a great underrated singer and writer, a guy called Noah Johnson, who he's Welsh, but he was working some years ago with some people in the Wu-Tang clan, and you know, like you afforded me a great opportunity, and he afforded me an opportunity to work with some of these people. Flew me out to New York. We'd go out to their studio, which was in deepest darkest Brooklyn every day, and they'd send a limousine for me to take me down into the hood because, you know, they were worried about me. You know, they wanted me to be safe. Yeah. And there was this house that they all had, which had different production suites. Now, first of all, I got Choco, who is the Wu's main DJ. Anybody who says that, you know, DJs just sort of cut up other people's records, a real proper DJ. Choco's mother, he's actually trained as a clarinet player. His mother was actually in the film of Little Shop of Horrors and was also a classically trained musician. So what he doesn't know about music isn't worth knowing. He's extremely sensitive and extremely talented. Right. And what they wanted me for was to provide some acoustic guitar over what they were doing with Noah. And so I wandered in there with this thing. With that thing. And some of the older guys said to some of the younger guys, okay, stop what you're doing, come downstairs, and I want you to check this out. So I was just doing acoustic overdubs, which I've done all my life.
Yes.
And you could have heard a pin drop because all
Right.
these people just watching what I was doing, listening to what I was doing. The engineer turned to his son, who was, so see, that's how that happens. You don't get it from a loop.
Right, exactly.
And they all, and, you know, they all went away and, you know, sort of beaming. And follow on from that story, at the time, I remember we were rehearsing an SIR. And I was being put up at the Royalton, which was, I think, what's that, 44th Street. So SIR in New York, what's that, 22nd, 23rd? It was a nice day. And we decided to go up to the Royalton. So I was there with, you know, this posse. And they immediately, you know, there was no question that they were going to try to hire some cabs because no cabs were going to stop for a bunch of black people, particularly those who looked, you know, done up in all the gear. I mean, they were complete sweethearts, and they had, you know, all the bling and everything else.
Right.
But it was a nice day for a walk, and so we were walking up the road, and prodigal son turned to me and said, "Hey, you know why all these people are staring at you?" And I said, "Oh, are people staring at me?" I had no, you know, I was completely oblivious to this. I was just enjoying walking through New York on a sunny day.
Right.
I said, "Oh, yeah." He says, they're thinking, who is this guy? He must be really famous to have all those bodyguards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, that's absolutely damning, but that was true. And
The thing that it makes me think is that, of course, they were actually looking at them, not looking at you, because Rupert Holmes told me a fantastic story about when he was first working with Barbra Streisand, and they went out to dinner together. And as soon as they walked into the restaurant, every waiter in the place came running over and, "Can I help you? And let me take your coat and to do this," and organizing her seat and asking, you know, everything that she wanted, and they were always all over the table. And Rupert Holmes slightly sarcastically said, "Oh, the service is really good here. It must be my jacket."
yeah.
And Barbra Streisand looked over at him and said, "Oh, it is a nice jacket, yes," and went on with her meal. She didn't get the joke
Yeah.
that it was
Yeah.
that because it happened so often to her, it was nothing. Well, Matt, I can't believe you don't have any ABC stories. Come on.
Well, yeah. Well, there was one which comes to mind. We did the Universal Amphitheater, and the bus was parked up and due to leave at like 5 a.m. I forget. I think we were driving to Vegas or somewhere like that, and so, you know, we had some time off. We had a day off the following day, and so we went out, and a few of us. I don't know if you know Lily Gonzalez, but Lily decided that she was going to have an evening on the tequila, and she was going to drag me into the tequila, and I was a willing victim. I haven't had a drink for a while now, but in those days I did.
Yes.
And as I know that you've never partaken, but tequila has this funny way of making you think that everything's fine until you get up and you start to try to walk, and your appendages don't work anymore. And so we got up and left the bar and then went back to the bus, which was parked in the lot at Universal. You could look down into the lot, and the set for Desperate Housewives. So Desperate Housewives was still being filmed at the time. So this must be what, 10 years ago? I don't know. But I thought, I think I'll pop down there and have a look at Desperate Housewives being filmed. Okay, so fortunately, I had my laminate with me because the rookie mistake is to leave your laminate on the bus, and then everybody thinks that you're on the bus, and then the bus leaves without you. I had my laminate, but the other rookie mistake that I made was to leave my phone on the bus. Now, when you and I toured, there were no mobile phones.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
think about that. If we missed the bus, we missed the bus, and that was that.
And I did often.
So I thought, great. Well, I'll go down and I'll watch it being filmed. And then so I went down there, and because I had a limit on, security didn't give me any grief. Okay, I better go back to the bus. You know, there was still a couple of hours before the bus was due to leave. And I could see the bus up the hill. But I realized the trip down was much harder than the trip back up. I didn't have a flashlight. I didn't have anything. I thought, how the hell am I going to get back to that bus? And so I threw myself on the mercy of the security guards. And I said, I don't know how to get back to my bus, so I think you're going to have to take me in. I can't phone the tour manager because I left my phone on the bus, and so you're going to have to somehow find a way to reach the tour manager. So they took me into the police station at Universal while they got in touch with the tour manager. And the tour manager thought he was going to have to scrape me up off the floor, and thought, you know, I might have gotten into some kind of trouble. But it was just, no, I left my phone on the bus. I couldn't call you. Sorry about this, but anyway, it all ended happily.
You got through it, yeah. I don't think people realize how difficult it is for musicians on tour. The interesting thing was when we did the Michael Ball tour together.
Yeah.
The first night that the first gig that we did together, we all went back on the bus. The next morning, I was called in by the manager. I think 7:30 in the morning, somebody knocked at my door and said, he wants to see you downstairs. You have to go down and see him. Traditional, older British manager.
Oh, yes. Oh, God.
Yes, I can't remember. Anyway, I went downstairs. I met him in the, coffee room of the hotel. And he said, "We are furious with you." And I said, "Well, why?" And he said, "Well, because you did not go backstage to speak to the artist last night after the show." And I said, "Well, you see, the bus left immediately and I wouldn't have been able to get back to my hotel, and I had all of my equipment." They said, "That is not our affair. It is customary in the theater for the musical director to come back to the dressing room and confer with the artist about the show and about anything that they might want changed." And I said, "Well, yes, but how am I going to do that? The bus leaves very quickly and I have to get my stuff." They said, "That is not our problem. That is your problem," he said.
Yeah.
I said, "I see." So what happened was, for the following, I think there were 18 dates of that tour. And for the following 17 nights, I had to get a taxi back to the hotel because I had to go backstage. And then it would have been okay if I could have just seen Michael and said, "How was the show? Oh, it was great." Or, let's think about what we're going to do in song number 3 or whatever. Oh, no. So I went backstage every night, and there was a party going on around here.
Yeah.
A celebration to last throughout the year. I mean, it was, if you don't mind the quote. And so everybody else had brought their good times and their laughter too, but not me, because I was waiting to try to catch that bus, but I never did. And so every night I had to wait for this enormous, wild party going out. There were usually at least about 30 people in his dressing room, going bonkers, driller killer, with great amounts of liquid refreshment. And then after I'd waited an hour and a half or 2 hours for this party to be over, then I would get that moment when I said, "Michael, can we talk now?" He said, "Yeah, how was the show?" "Oh, great, wonderful, marvelous, dear, marvelous." And that was it, every single night. So people don't realize how tough it is to be on a tour.
Well, especially for someone in your position, having done a lot of lot of stuff with our mutual friend Steve Brown over the years, and Jess as well, Jess Bailey,
Sure, yeah.
wonderful musicians and people and musical directors.
Yeah.
Particularly when Steve and I were on tour with Coogan, with Steve Coogan.
Right.
And that was an amazing tour, and it took up the best part of a year. And we would roll into town and take over a theater for 3 weeks or longer. And I remember being in Manchester. We took over the Palace Theatre. We were there for 3 weeks, I don't know, maybe a month. And the Spice Girls were at the arena. And we all had friends in the band. And so on their night off, they came to see our show. And then on our night off, we went to see their show.
Right.
And I was there the night that Posh pulled Bex. And it was very much a case of Victoria pulling David Beckham. It was quite obvious.
I see.
And everybody in the band who were all football fans were, "Ooh, that's David Beckham over there," and Malmatic, rest his soul, bless him. He was sort of, he was always a great observer of people. He was observing the situation, and it was completely wasted on me. I had no idea who David Beckham was. I wasn't remotely interested in Manchester United. What was going on? But I was there for that historic moment. But yeah, going back to what you were saying, what Steve used to have to do was to go and deal with Steve, and also, we had Simon Pegg and Julia Davis on the tour with us, who've now become mega stars.
Yes.
And it could be argued that the music was never. It wasn't just an addendum, but it all had to tie in with the drama. Yeah. And at this particular time, Steve had a reputation for being a bit of a Coogan, that is, not Brown. Yes. For being a bit of a wild guy. Yes. And again, that's all gone. He's now squeaky clean. But he was always extremely focused, very hardworking. I had some good times with the slightly wilder guy on nights off, but when there was work to be done, there was work to be done.
Yes.
And he was focused, and Steve Brown was focused, but Steve had to be able to talk to Coogan and make sure that the timings were right on the dramatic bits. And of course, Steve Brown has this great dramatic sense, and then relay the information to us.
Yes.
At which point we were relaxing in the bar. No relaxing in the bar for Steve Brown, thank you very much.
No.
Because also at the same time, he was doing Lenny Henry's TV show, so he was doing parts for that.
Yeah.
So it's very, very hard work for you guys.
Yes, it is indeed. It's a job of masterful diplomacy and not getting much sleep, because you're always having to work when everybody else is relaxing. I'm so glad that we get this chance to kind of show people a little bit of the behind the scenes of what's actually going on. What song are you going to do for us now?
Okay, well, this is a song that I wrote fairly recently. I co-wrote it with somebody I believe Susie Webb, who was a neighbor of yours, and she sung with everybody, Queen, The Who, you name it. And we were collaborating on songs. And this just kind of occurred to us, and we knocked it together very quickly of an afternoon. And it's based on a true story. It's called The Dictator's Daughter. And I have a number of friends, I won't mention their names, but they discovered that their putative fathers-in-law were not necessarily the businessmen from another country that they purported to be, but had some kind of rather dodgy background. So anyway, this song is called The Dictator's Daughter.
She was looking back to see if I was looking back at her. Her book on Greek mythology, when her gaze returned to me, I felt my senses start to stir. I didn't know just who she was, with furies on her side, I thought they had her in their claws, and now I'm terrified 'cause I'm in love with the dictator's daughter. I fell into her ebony eyes, and I went like a lamb to the slaughter, which comes as no surprise. Now she's in love with a beautiful pauper, whose heart is bright and pure and true, with a soul like gilded copper. What's a girl to do? What's a girl to do?
Matt, I'm so happy that you've been able to do Radio Richard. Your musicians' funnies have been lovely, and it's great to be able to talk to you again. And I think it's the best thing for me is that you're able to sing some songs for us as a solo artist, because that proves that you're not just Matt Backer.
What's it called? Nominative determinism. Yes.
Yes, exactly. I was stretching on that joke, but I hope it worked. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Thanks, Matt, and lay it on us.
Hi, I'm Richard Niles, here to tell you about my podcast and my YouTube channel, Radio Richard. Now, the best things in life are free, people say, but are they really? I mean, the internet, for instance, you're paying for the service. Now, exercise, everybody says exercise is free. Well, no, you're paying with your sweat. But subscribing to Radio Richard is absolutely free. It costs you nothing. Not only that, we actually pay you with thought-provoking interviews and performances with amazing award-winning artists. Where else can you get my interviews with the greatest producers in music history? People like 80s innovator Trevor Horn, Arif Mardin, from Aretha Franklin to Chaka Khan, Shel Talmy, producer of the brilliant sound of The Who and the Kinks, and Jerry Wexler, the man who was a co-founder of Atlantic Records and produced some of the greatest hits in history. So go ahead, please like, share, and subscribe. You'll help keep this podcast alive and give the world better production values. Radio Richard, it's absolutely free.
Radio Richard.